Sell one of these 11 revolvers today, and in 5 years you'll be kicking yourself. That's what happens when scarcity meets demand and nobody told you in time. Some of these you already own. Most of you don't know why they're about to spike. By the end of this list, you will. Number 11. Most people think the Smith & Wesson Model 27 is just an old police gun. That's the misconception. The reality is, the Model 27, it was the original .357 Magnum, not a budget version. The cartridge was built around in 1935. Early pre-war examples came with hand-fitted actions and registered Magnum documentation, a practice Smith & Wesson dropped decades ago. But here's what most collectors miss. Post-war Model 27s, especially the 3.5-inch barrel configuration, were never produced in the volume people assume. Smith & Wesson treated it as a premium product line, not a mass-market revolver. Production runs stayed deliberately limited compared to the Model 19 that replaced it commercially. That gap is starting to matter. Collectors chasing pre-1970 examples with original presentation cases are running into a shrinking supply and a growing buyer pool. The Model 27 isn't flashy, but flashy isn't what drives long-term value. Scarcity does. And number 10 takes that same logic somewhere the government tried to shut down completely. The government didn't just regulate this revolver, it tried to erase it from the market entirely. The Astra 357 manufactured in Spain got caught in the crossfire of the Gun Control Act of 1968. That law didn't ban the gun outright, but it gutted the import pipeline that brought affordable European revolvers into the U.S. Once that pipeline closed, existing inventory became the only inventory. No new shipments, no replacements, no second chances. Here's the detail most sellers don't know. Astra's 357 used a unique coil spring action that Spanish gunsmiths refined specifically to compete with Smith & Wesson's offerings, and it actually outperformed several American revolvers in durability testing at the time. But the import ban froze the clock. What exists in the U.S. today is what will ever exist in the U.S. No more containers arriving from Spain, no more dealer restocks. Just a fixed, shrinking number of guns getting passed between collectors who increasingly refuse to let go. Number 9 had a different kind of ending. This one, the factory just stopped existing. Some revolvers do not get discontinued. The company that made them just disappears. That is the story of the Colt Python's New York factory production, specifically pre-1980 examples, built before quality control issues forced Colt into a years-long shutdown of the model. Colt did not phase the Python out gracefully. They pulled it, rebuilt their manufacturing process, and reintroduced a different version years later that collectors widely consider inferior in fit and action smoothness. That gap is the entire story. Original Pythons, hand-fitted by Colt's custom shop technicians using a process the company never fully documented, cannot be replicated. The skilled machinists who built them are retired or gone. The tooling was altered. Here's what most buyers do not realize. The royal blue finish on early Pythons used a bluing process more labor-intensive than anything Colt uses today. That finish alone separates real pre-1980 examples from anything claiming to be comparable. Once collectors fully connect that dot, the price gap between original and reissue is going to widen fast. Number 8 got hit by a different kind of shutdown. This one was political. Some guns get banned outright, others get quietly delisted, and that's almost worse for supply. The Taurus Model 66, in specific configurations, ran into California's handgun roster requirements, a compliance system that forces manufacturers to recertify models periodically or lose the right to sell them new in state. Taurus didn't recertify every variant. Some configurations simply fell off the list permanently. That means no new in-state sales of those specific models, full stop. Existing examples already in private hands became the entire available pool for California buyers, and increasingly for buyers everywhere chasing the discontinued configuration specifically. Here's the part most people miss. Roster delisting doesn't care about demand. It's a paperwork and testing cost decision made by a manufacturer, not a reflection of how good the gun is. The Model 66's 7-shot cylinder was actually ahead of its time, beating most competitors to that configuration by years. But once a model drops off a state roster, manufacturers rarely bring it back. That's a closed door, not a paused one. Number 7 didn't get banned. It just never existed in volume to begin with. Some revolvers were never going to be common. The Korth Magnum was hand-built in Germany, and German hand-building doesn't scale. Each Korth revolver went through a fitting process closer to Swiss watchmaking than American firearms manufacturing. Master gunsmiths hand-lapped the action until trigger pull met a tolerance most factories don't bother measuring. That process meant verified low annual output, far below comparable American-made revolvers. Here's what separates Korth from other rare claims you'll hear online. Korth's production records are actually documented, unlike a lot of boutique manufacturers who throw around the word limited without backing it up. Collectors can trace specific serial ranges to specific production years with real precision. That kind of verified scarcity is rare in itself. Most rarity claims in the gun world don't hold up to scrutiny. This one does. Add in the fact that Korth as a company has changed ownership and manufacturing focus more than once, and original West German era examples represent a closed chapter that will never reopen. If you're still watching at number 6, you already understand something most people never will. By the time everyone else catches on, you'll already own it. Most people think military contractants only matter for rifles. They're wrong, and the Smith & Wesson Model 13 proves it. The Model 13 wasn't just sold to civilians. It was adopted by United States Air Force Security Forces, a contract history that gives it a documented service pedigree most civilian market revolvers will never have. Military contract guns carry a different kind of credibility. They weren't built to a marketing brief. They were built to a procurement specification, tested against requirements that had nothing to do with looking good in a display case. Here's the detail that matters for collectors. Contract-marked examples, with correct military proof marks and documentation trail, are a different category entirely from commercial Model 13s that look identical on the surface. The two are not interchangeable in value, and the gap between them is going to widen as more collectors learn to tell the difference. Most sellers still don't know what to look for. That won't last. Once contract documentation becomes common knowledge, undocumented, maybe military examples lose value while properly papered ones climb. Number 5 isn't about who used it. It is about a finish that almost nobody can replicate anymore. Forget the gun for a second. Talk about the finish. The Colt single-action Army, in its nickel-plated factory finish from the early to mid-20th century, used a plating process that modern manufacturers consider too costly and too inconsistent to replicate at scale. Most reproductions you see today use a different plating chemistry entirely, one that does not age the same way and does not carry the same depth. Original factory nickel from that era develops a specific patina that collectors can identify almost on sight. Here is what most buyers do not know. That original nickel process required hand polishing between plating stages, a step modern manufacturers cut for cost reasons decades ago. You cannot recreate that finish with today's processes without essentially hand-building the gun from scratch. That means every surviving factory original nickel single-action Army is a finite, non-renewable category, not because the gun is rare, because the finish is. Collectors are slowly waking up to the fact that finish-specific rarity often outpaces model-specific rarity. Number 4 ties directly to a historical event most people forget happened at all. Everyone remembers the event. Almost nobody remembers what it did to this revolver's value. The Smith & Wesson Victory model, produced under wartime contract during the Second World War, was built for Allied forces and Lend-Lease distribution, with millions shipped overseas under military specification. Here's the part most people miss. A huge percentage of Victory models never came back to the United States. They stayed overseas, were lost, or were destroyed. What remained stateside, especially examples with intact original wartime, parkerized finish, and correct lanyard rings, represents a small fraction of original production. The historical weight adds something a normal revolver can't replicate. This isn't just an old gun. It's a documented artifact from a specific global event, and that documentation matters more every year as the generation who fought with these guns disappears. Collectors aren't just buying a revolver. They're buying a direct link to a verified historical moment, and that link gets more valuable as living memory fades. Number 3 isn't about a war. It's about a company that nearly destroyed its own reputation. Sometimes, scarcity isn't about a ban or a war. It's about a company nearly ruining itself. Colt's quality control collapse in the late 20th century is well documented among collectors, a period where fit, finish, and action quality dropped noticeably across several models before the company restructured. The Colt King Cobra fell right into that window. Early production King Cobras, built before the worst of Colt's quality slide, represent a specific sweet spot collectors actively hunt for. Here's what most casual buyers don't check. Serial number ranges matter enormously here. Guns built in the brief window of tighter tolerances before the slide are functionally a different product than later examples carrying the same model name. Most sellers list King Cobras without distinguishing between these production windows at all. That's a mistake that's going to cost them. As more buyers learn to read date codes and serial ranges, the early examples are going to separate hard from the later ones in price. Right now, most people can't tell the difference. Number 2 is going to feel almost too obvious. That's exactly the point. This pick is going to feel boring. That's because it is, and that's exactly why it matters. The Ruger GP100 isn't rare. It isn't discontinued. It isn't tied to a war or a ban. It's still in production right now, which makes it the strangest entry on this list. Here's the logic most people miss completely. Early GP100s, specifically the original 3-screw frame configuration from its first production years, represent the transition point between Ruger's older Security 6 platform and the modern GP100 design that's still selling today. Transition point guns in any product line tend to get overlooked while in production, then spike hard once collectors realize the early variant differs meaningfully from the current one. Ruger has made small but real changes to the GP100 over decades. Most current owners have no idea their gun isn't identical to what's sold today. The earliest examples, built before later design refinements, are a closing window disguised as an open one. Everyone assumes you can always just buy a new GP100. You can. You just can't buy this specific early version of it anymore. And that's the trap most people fall into. This is the one I told you about at the start. The one every serious collector already owns, and the one most casual buyers still walk past in display cases. The Smith & Wesson Model 29, the original .44 Magnum, is not rare because of a ban or a factory fire. It is rare because of cultural weight stacked on top of genuine engineering history. Smith & Wesson built the Model 29 to handle a cartridge that, at the time, exceeded what most revolvers could safely fire, That alone makes it historically significant. Then pop culture took over, and demand permanently outpaced anything the factory could produce in a given year. Here is what separates real collectors from casual buyers. Before the 1970s, examples, particularly those with the original pinned and recessed construction that Smith & Wesson later phased out for cost reasons, represent a manufacturing standard the company does not use anymore. Pinned barrels and recessed cylinders were not cosmetic. They were structural choices Smith & Wesson abandoned to cut production costs decades later. Once you know to look for it, you cannot unsee which examples are genuinely original and which are not. Every serious collector already checks for it. Most casual buyers do not even know the term. That gap is the entire reason this revolver sits at number 1, and that gap is only going to widen from here. 11 different reasons they are about to be worth more than most people realize. Some of you already own 2 or 3 of these. Now you know why to never let them go. Drop the number you already own in the comments. I read every single one.